Welcome to the People Are People podcast, life lessons learned in real time, where we touch on the crazy realities of dealing with human behavior in the workplace. In 2022, I am presenting a series that I simply call the New Manager Series, where we will focus on a variety of topics every manager needs to know to be successful during and beyond their first year of management. Being a manager is not always a pretty job. It comes with highs and lows that you must prepare yourself to navigate. This week, we are discussing the emotional email and how to avoid it. Whether you are a manager or a frontline employee, if you've been in the workplace for a certain period of time and had the joys, the privilege of having to communicate via email, then you can understand that there are times in which information, messages are going to come through an email as a primary form of communication that may trigger you in some way. It may trigger some type of emotion. Some emails are going to make you smile, make you laugh. Others will be, kind of leave you indifferent. While some emails are going to trigger you in a way that generates anger, frustration, and almost tempt you to then return that in kind by way of your email. These emails are commonly referred to as being emotional emails. And some telltale signs that may help you to recognize when you are on the verge of sending an emotional email is perhaps the number of times that you initiate a response. If you find that your response back to the email is lengthy, meaning maybe you have 2 paragraphs worth of response to an email that you received from someone, your tone may be a bit, terse or short. It could be even construed as you being downright insulting, and that may be in your intent. But there are just these little telltale signs that you can look for to glean if you are on the verge of sending an emotional email. Just the way you feel as you're typing that email could be setting you up for sending an emotional email. So you may be wondering, well, what's wrong with me sending an emotional email? Well, unfortunately, sending an emotional email may not necessarily yield the outcome that you're hoping for. If you're hoping to silence someone, for example, who is emailing you with a question that you might perceive to be stupid or insulting even to you, returning an emotional email is not going to solve the problem, perhaps, that exists. Additionally, if there is some form of resolution that you can offer, it's going to be clouded by the depths of emotion that are in your email. And the recipient may not even be able to delineate what the resolution is. Also, these are the kinds of emails that you do not necessarily want to go, above to your boss or your boss's boss. These are the kind of emails that could potentially, create problems for you short term and long term. So as a manager, I always want to encourage you to think through any email that you're sending back to someone, whether they are individuals that you manage on your team, whether they are your peers, or even your direct line, director or executive vice president, whoever is in your chain of command. You want to ensure that your emails are always professional when they need to be professional. And if you are on the verge of sending something out that is less than professional, that you take a step back. Okay. So I wanted to just go through a few tips in this podcast to talk through, how you can navigate this space. Again, you will likely encounter many emails that are going to rub you the wrong way in your position. Your email traffic is going to rapidly increase or significantly increase from what you may have seen as a frontline employee if you've been promoted up through the ranks, or even if you're coming into a new organization, depending on how organizationally sound they are, there could really be some issues that emerge, unfortunately. So you want to, take steps, take precautions to ensure that you are prepared to deal with that. So you have to find a way to communicate effectively without presenting yourself as being too emotional. And you want to be the person who's finding the resolution, no matter what's coming at you in that email. So the first tip that I have for you as a manager is to always remain objective and not subjective. Simply put, you always want to just stick to the facts. People oftentimes who are sending you the emails, if their emails are emotionally charged, there's a variety of reasons for that, right? Particularly if you're a new manager, it may have absolutely nothing to do with you. It could be that prior to your arrival, there were a lot of gaps and deficiencies, and those things are now, materializing while you're still trying to get your footing. There's other things that may be going on with that individual and their team or performers on their team. And the easy answer is to maybe vent some of that frustration in your direction based on whatever service it is or product it is that you may be providing to that team. If you're dealing with a subordinate who is sending you an emotionally charged email, again, there may be things that precede you. It could be about you and the fact that you're still having to learn as well, right? And that can be a little frustrating for, employees who have been in place for a while. So there's just so many things that can, contribute to what's coming at you. And so you have to be the bigger person. You have to be the bigger person who finds a way to separate what you're seeing and provide resolution. Okay, you have to pull out the emotion of the email that you've received or the emotion that you're feeling and find a way to just present the facts. You want to focus on the issue. You want to acknowledge the issue if there is any. You want to give resolution. And that may occur in the form of a policy. Maybe you need to provide the person who is sending you a specific question or concern or complaint the policy that addresses that, because maybe they don't know. You may need to redirect them to the right point of contact because it may not even be you. Their anger or frustration may be misdirected. Or you just want to provide timing for follow-up, right? If you don't have the immediate answer, you want to, again, acknowledge the receipt of the email, acknowledge the issue that they are presenting you with, and let them know that you're going to follow up. You don't want to get into the minutia of being emotional with them or pointing fingers back at them. Just present the facts. You should think of your emails as evidence that you may have to take to court. And when I say court could be held with your boss in, defining what's going on and how your team is managing it or navigating the situation. But think of this as your evidence, okay? So keep it very objective, focus on the issue, present the facts. Because at the end of the day, you are in a business, right? So you have to treat this as the business it is. Secondly, as I've already alluded to, you want to check your emotions, okay? Know what your personal state of mind is before you hit the send button of that email. If you're having a bad day and this email is triggering you just because, step away, push away from the computer, maybe walk away, go get some coffee, go get some water, whatever your, drink of choice is. Maybe even take a walk. Maybe you need to just get out and get some air, but step away from the computer. Don't respond right away if you don't have to. The other option is, hey, if you've got a meeting coming up and, you can't necessarily respond to that email because you're, again, feeling a certain kind of way about it, some emotions, jot down a few thoughts, but again, don't hit the send button. Your goal is to separate your emotions, your feelings from that email, and again, focus on what it's asking you for. I've already hinted at what some of the telltale signs are as to whether or not you're having an emotional response to it. But again, if you find yourself responding, let's say you're frustrated, you can feel the heat rising, the tick coming on, the twitch of sorts coming on, and you happen to look at your computer screen and really notice that you've basically typed a lengthy paragraph or more than one paragraph. Or if you find that the tone that you've included in the email could be offensive, delete and start again. But make sure you check your emotions, take them out of that email. The third tip that I have for managers is along the lines of checking for tone. So I was just kind of speaking to this in, encouraging you to check your emotions. You want to zero in on what your tone is, okay? Critically evaluate the tone of your email and ask yourself, if someone sent that to you, would you be okay with it? So you're going to be looking for things like if you're inadvertently or subliminally insulting someone's intelligence. Are you being a bit sarcastic in the way you're responding back to them? Are you merely referring them back to your old emails where you gave maybe the same information once before? This happens a lot. Sometimes, people, keep in mind that people sometimes lose the information that you've given to them previously, or it may not have connected for them what you were trying to explain. So you want to be careful not to insult them or make it seem as though you're questioning their intelligence in the email, or that you're assessing for their mental or cognitive capacity in an email. If you have sent the information already, it's okay to refer them back to the email, but you want to provide like some additional guidance, or maybe consider presenting the information in an alternative way if you have to send it back via email. Now, what I would like to encourage you to do is don't feel like you're anchored to the email as your only way of communication. I think, unfortunately, people forget that before we had emails, there were phones, or we went and met with people face to face, right? If there was an issue going on. So always remember that there is more than one way to communicate with people. If you find that they're not getting it in the email and you're having to re-explain yourself, or it's on the verge of becoming argumentative, pick up the phone, schedule a meeting. There's multiple things you can do to take this offline and have a formal conversation to make sure that everybody is on the same page. It's kind of like, it's very similar to social media where sometimes people are, I like to call them keyboard ninjas, where they can really kick out the words and the insults or say things that maybe are coming across as being insulting. But if you were to meet with them face to face or put them on the phone, most of the time they are a little more respectful in their tone to you, and they are able to focus more on the issue at hand. And it's a great way for you to be a little charismatic and try to woo-woo the situation, because you don't want email, again, to amplify the situation or accelerate the situation to being something more than it has to be. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone or schedule a meeting and talk through what it is. For me as a manager, if I found myself going back in a third time and they just weren't getting what I was trying to communicate to them, then I would schedule a meeting. I'd say, hey, let's just get together for 5 minutes and talk through this. I feel like maybe something's getting lost in the email, or maybe I'm not understanding what you're asking for. And oftentimes people are willing to do it. Yes, it's another meeting on their calendar and they may not like that. But if we can all save ourselves the email trail and the reattaching of other emails, it usually works in everyone's best interest. Now, the other tip that I have for you as it relates to avoiding the emotional email is to work on your greeting and outros of your emails, right? You want to always, as I've said, keep it professional and polite. If you are the initiator of the email, you might consider a couple of greetings that, kind of have some go-tos that greet the recipient. There was someone that I worked with who used to always start her emails out as, "I hope you are doing well," before she really went into what the issue was. And she was really good at bulleting the issues, right? So she would say, "I hope this email finds you well. I hope you are having a good day. I wanted to touch base with you about a couple of things. And so I would encourage you to find your niche. I know other people that I currently work with who love to start their emails out by talking about the weather because, a lot of us on the team are located all over the country. So they love to start the emails off with, how the weather is in their neck of the woods. They like to sometimes talk about their family. I think obviously it depends on your relationship with the other person, right? So, work on what your tagline is going to be for initiating these emails. And then, of course, close out the email respectfully as well. Generally, you can sway people if you keep it professional. And again, I'm going to remind you that these are emails that may show up later somewhere else that you did not expect them to. People love to blind copy others on the messages. Sometimes they just straight out, CC mail them on an email communication. But others sometimes will blind copy other people in positions of power onto your email, kind of like I told you this is what would happen, or this is what's going on, or, whatever the case may be. So you always want to have that in the back of your mind. I'm not saying that you should be afraid per se to communicate with people directly, because you always want to be direct and upfront and honest. But again, you always want to keep it professional as well, because you want to show that you are doing your due diligence and that you are truly trying to solve the problem. So these are just a few of my tips for ways to avoid the emotional email. I hope you find them helpful to you in your journey as a new manager. And hey, if you've been a manager for a while, I hope you have also heard some things that may prove beneficial to you in the long run. And with that, thank you for listening. That's all I have today. Please remember to follow this podcast. If you can share the podcast, that would be great. I am a small podcaster in a mighty pond of podcasters. So anything that you can do to spread the word about my podcast will go a long way to help put me on the map. Thank you. Stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next podcast.